And welcome to the first ever episode of This Week in Perfect Team. I am your host, Chris Lochelle, and tonight we've got an awesome mission. Our mission is to unpack and really decode the content bomb that Chris just dropped on us 2 short hours ago. There's a ton of amazing cards in there, and really you can tell that Chris and the team really went for it here. And so our job is really to help you guys figure out where these cards are going to be fitting into the meta. You know, we're talking about the 5 Face of the Franchise cards. We're talking about the 8 toppers, as well as the 3 surprise packs-only cards that we got tonight. If this is your first time on one of my streams, and I'm guessing that's just about all of you, please do hit the follow and hit the notification bell to be notified when we do go live in the future. I can promise that we'll be a little bit better at starting on time and not having the audio issues or the frame dropping that we might be having as we speak here tonight. So hello to the chat. I can't even connect to the chat yet. Hopefully that catches up here in a minute, but hopefully everyone's being cordial and kind in there. Tonight, to help me go on this mission here, I've got someone that needs no introduction, but I'll give one anyway. So Your Kidneys probably has done more for the community than anyone else here with providing a queryable, sortable, free database of all known cards within the Out of the Park universe, and also running mathematical regression underpinning it to let you guys know who's good. Who's good in general, who's good versus left-handed pitching, who's good versus right, and then the same splits on the pitching side. So glad to have Kidneys with me as we try to do this. And these cards just dropped. It's difficult to understand exactly where they're going to fit in. And having Kidneys and his technical prowess and the spreadsheet underpinning our discussion tonight is going to be a huge asset. So a quick disclaimer. The feedback that we're going to be providing tonight is most applicable to the upper echelon leagues within Perfect Team. Every card that came out tonight is going to dominate a Stone League. Every card that came out tonight is going to be one of your best players on a Bronze League. So as we're looking at these cards and really where they fit, we are comparing them against the very best of the very best. And that is the lens that we'll be looking at them tonight. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So the first card we got tonight was Face of the Franchise, Hank Aaron for the Atlanta Braves. And for me, the first thing your eyes go to is that versus left-handed pitching profile. You know, the defense is a little lighter than what we've seen for some of the recent cards that come out for Face of the Franchise. So that's obviously going to be a talking point. And as we're looking at the slides that we prepared for you guys tonight, take a look at the top right here, and I'll walk you through what we're really looking at. So the column called Sim Score is a similarity scoring of who the cards that are in the Perfect Team universe most closely resemble this particular card today. And it's funny, as we look at this one, the 3 most similar cards to Face of the Franchise Hank Aaron are actually Face of the Franchise Hornsby, Face of the Franchise Mays, and then Face of the Franchise DiMaggio, so very recent cards. And a Sim Score of 910 isn't all that strong. So this doesn't say that Hornsby and Hank Aaron here are doppelgangers. That's far from the case here. So as we look at and we take a quick peek at the Hornsby line there, what this is effectively saying is that if you take 10 contact from Hornsby and you give 4 power and you give 10 avoid Ks, that's how these cards line up. So that's the way to read the chart here. And then due to a very good friend of mine on the Discord, I've actually got another level of data here that I think is really changing the game in terms of how we can talk about these cards and where they might fit in. There's that PEL OPS column. This is telling you that for the last 5 years, how well these similar comparable cards have played within the Perfect League. So we're not just telling you how similar Hank Aaron is to these cards, but how are these cards currently playing in the Perfect League so that we can start to estimate really where Hank's going to fit in. And then as you go to the bottom of the screen, this is where we're looking at defense. So how well does Hank Aaron's defensive profile compare to others in the league? Who are his most close comps? And that's what we've got here. So as we do examine these comp tables, A couple things that stick out to me with regards to Hank is the versus right bat profile. Those are not names that you see too frequently with regards to Luis Gonzalez. And you got Mauer there, who is playable because he's a catcher. But Hank's really going to soar when you look at his versus lefty profile. You've got Willie Mays there, Frank Thomas 100, who can't really be deployed defensively. DiMaggio faces the franchise, and then Hornsby, which we all know is going to be a really big card. But let's pull your kidneys in now. So kidneys, what does your regression model say about Hank and really how competitive he's going to be?
I really like this card. I was looking at him. He hit 6 overall, about second V left, and where do I have him? I have him about 21 V right. He's got an insane amount of power. 151, I think, is the third highest in the game V left right now. And he just overall hits that 128, the maximum contact V left. He is just going to absolutely blow cards out of the water when he's staying against lefties. Against righties, he's probably a platoon at best. And his fielding leaves quite a bit to be desired with only 82 range in the outfield. So maybe if you're looking for a DH platoon, or if you're playing like in a righty ballpark and you want to bump up his home runs, bump up those hitting numbers, he's very similar, in my opinion, to the new Hornsby card that also just got released. They have very similar across the board profiles, with Hornsby having a bit more in the eye and a bit better overall versus right. So he may struggle to compare and beat out Hornsby for a position if you're not going to play Hornsby at third base. But overall, really solid hitter. Definitely a top tier card for Perfect League, and you'll see him pretty much anyone that can run him wants this card V left.
Yeah, what's interesting to me, and really where my head goes to in terms of where he's going to be played in, say, a perfect league, is, are people going to be willing to put that glove out in left field versus left-hand pitching? 82 range is no, it's not no slouch. 82 range is solid, but when you compare it to the meta outfield of today, where you've got really 92 is your floor that you see frequently out there. Will Hank be more often deployed as a DH, or will he get some innings in the outfield as a left fielder?
I mean, he's definitely looking at a DH. I think you could see some of the more offensive teams potentially put him in left field, but we're looking at 90 range is pretty much the minimum all around these days for what's it called? For range right now, with like Speaker and Gwynn coming out at the low end. So I think if you put him in the outfield, he's going to drop you some runs. The question is, does he make it up with the bat? And I think he definitely does. At least first left, he's going to hit really hard, and he's going to hit a lot. So
excellent. Let's move on to our next card. So next we've got Bob Feller. Bob Feller was a card that I was very excited to see come out, and the number one thing that I was looking at here was the control profile. Was he going to have enough control to really be a pitcher that was used? And most people are likely looking at this as a bullpen arm, given that you've got just insane stuff here. And I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure that stuff's only going to bump up within the bullpen with those 3 really high quality pitches that he's got there. From a similarity score perspective here, Satchel Paige is your closest comp, but he's basically Satchel Paige with a ton more stuff. And the same can be said as you look at his different versus left and versus right profiles there. You're basically seeing cards that are competitive at the top end of each. So my personal opinion is Feller is going to definitely be a very usable card. My expectation is for most people to throw this in the pen so that you're avoiding too many at-bats versus left-handed batters, which are going to take advantage of that weaker control profile. But what do you see?
It's certainly a card that you're going to put in the pen. He's got lower end control, and like you were just pointing out, his splits really favor that right-handed side, so you can use him in the pen to get more advantageous matchups. Certainly if you're playing like a bunch of lefty starters, he would be an excellent person to come in against those right-handed batters that'll be playing against them. He throws hard. He's got great stamina. You're probably looking at about he might even hit over 180 versus right. and certainly around 165, 170 versus left for stuff numbers. I mean, just overall, it's kind of a game-breaking card compared to what it used to be. Some of the other options at bullpen are just going to be blown out of the water by him. So I think this is a really interesting card. We got so many good right-handed hitters tonight, and he's going to be a great option to counter them.
So moving on, next drop was Ken Griffey Jr. And I think for a defensive-oriented outfield, the first thing that people are looking at here is range. And he's got plenty of it to go around. 113 on the range side. And then from a bat profile perspective, he's certainly bringing a lot of contact with 113, a ton of power, and the avoid Ks versus the right-hand profile there is definitely no slouch either. As we look at his similarity scores, the people at the top of the list here, and again, these aren't the best comps in the world. The sim scores are all under 900 here, but they're ranking 750, 740 in the perfect league right now. And so you could expect Griffey to do even better than that on the old meta. Now, obviously, the meta is a consistently changing and evolving beast. And so with each new set of cards that comes out, existing performance baselines all go down. But you would expect Griffey to hit better than a Banks or a Musial 100, and not the face of the franchise one. What do you see with Griffey?
So Griffey is really, really solid defensively. I mean, he's the best outfielder in the game we have right now for defense. Just some exceptional numbers. 113 range is it's my dream, right? Just looking at, he's got okay versus right profile. I think I had him around 20-ish for versus right. He does struggle a lot versus left, and that's the weakness of this card, right? Is you're going to sacrifice a lot of offensive runs for his defensive output. So it's a trade-off, right? But I know there's some people out there who swear by defense, swear by center field defense, and they're certainly going to want this card. Maybe you only play him the right because of his bat, but he's going to save you a lot of runs defensively.
So that was my next question I was going to have for you. Currently, you have most teams running out Willie Mays face of the franchise every day. So now that you've got this Griffey card, which is going to be undoubtedly a better glove than Mays, but also undoubtedly a worse bat, what do you expect most people to do?
I suspect most people to pass on this card. Mays is just too good of a bat for the 7 points in range to make up. I think this is an excellent card. I think defensive teams are your best budget teams right now. And I think for teams like them, I saw one of these sell already for only $123,000. And I think that was a really, really good price for this card. So if you can get him for that cheap, if you're a cheaper end team, this card will definitely play in Diamond. It'll even play in Perfect just because of the value of defense.
A lot of the people that I interact with on Discord are similar to you, big fans of having the best gloves that money can buy out there. So I think I'm less likely to see people just punting on this, and especially for those players that appreciate the glove. He's at least going to hang around as a D-sub and likely come in maybe 7th, 8th inning for Mays, and then see Mays shift over to a corner and then bump, whether it's a Tony Gwynn or whoever you've got in a corner to the bench at that point. Moving on, we've got Stan Musial. So Stan Musial faced the franchise for the St. Louis Cardinals here. Another bat that profiles much better versus one side here. And the defense profile is actually interesting here. I don't have the outfield numbers, so perhaps you can speak to that. The infield numbers, first base isn't exactly the toughest threshold to be able to get on the field. And with a 73 first base rating and 50 range across the board, that's likely something that you could stomach if the bat was worth it. Now, as we try to answer, will the bat be worth it, let's look at some of his similarity scores. And really, you're looking at George Brett, Tris Speaker. Those are certainly bats that can punish right-hand pitching there. And he's even better in a lot of those various categories than those guys. So I definitely think this card's going to hit. It's just a matter of whether you want to platoon him at first, platoon at DH, or really figure out how he's going to fit into your strategy, if at all.
Yeah, that's the question. I don't actually have the outfield numbers yet, but seeing numbers in the 70s and 80s is leaving me to believe a 70 or 80 outfield range. low 80s, and that's really just going to hinder him a lot. So the bat's powerful. I mean, it's one of the best versus right bats. I have it as... That's not correct. Oh, yes, it is. I have it as the third best right bat right now, and that's just absolutely going to rake. The problem is the new competition for him at DH. He's going to be up against the Ty Cobb, the Ted Williams for those right-handed bat opportunities. And just overall, really powerful, really flexible. Not great defense, but flexible, kind of similar to a Jim O'Rourke in that regard. Just interesting card. If you like platooning at DH, he is one of the best right-handed bat options. He's probably not the best right-handed bat option you can get at DH, but certainly a powerful one nonetheless.
Next card we got was Cal Ripken. And this was a card that I was really looking forward to coming out. Obviously, rampant speculation in the process of elimination told us it was coming. And Cal Ripken's actually had some pretty strong numbers in the Perfect League when you compare his defensive play percent to those that you see other people running with, like an Ozzie Smith or a Pop Lloyd. So I was most curious to see if we would get a Ripken with even more range. And the range is 100, which certainly is in line with other players that have spent time at shortstop. Your Huey Jennings is right around there. Ernie Banks is right there. But it is short of, say, the 104 that a Yount has, and definitely well short of Pop Lloyd and Ozzie Smith. So I'm curious to see what the defensive plan for this card is. Obviously, he'd play an absolutely killer third base, and you're going to want to play him against left-handed pitching with a very, very strong bat there. As we look at his similarity scores, one thing that sticks out to me is I don't have any Perfect League data for any of the people on his versus righties table, and that's because no one's using those cards. So he's definitely a platoon bat. You don't want to play him versus righties. But against lefties, you've got some really good names there. You know, Larkin, face of the franchise, has proven to be a very hot bat in his limited time. Anson has been proven for years over on end. Pujols is all there, and Ripken is profiling better than most of these guys. So he's going to hit left-handed pitching, but where do you see him fitting in here?
This is your second baseman. I think absolutely this is your second baseman if he left. You play this card with what's it called? You play this card with Appling. You play this card with Pop Lloyd, and a platoon at second base. He will start for you at Perfect League, and he will be the highest level of gameplay. I'm actually really high on this card. I think the amazing amount of avoid Ks V left is going to make this like one of the highest hitters V left we have in the game right now, and he plays an amazing defense up the middle. So I just think this is a great piece for any team right now.
Yeah, what's interesting to me, and I don't fully understand how it plays out within the statistics, is the arm rating. So the one advantage that Cal has over Pop and over Ozzie is he's got a stronger arm. And so as we're looking at the numbers of Perfect League data and seeing Ripken with that play percentage, which is effectively a metric that says of all potential balls that one could get to, how many of those are you successfully making the play? You know, he is competitive with those top guys. And is that because of the arm? You know, my instinct would say that it is. And do you lose the benefit of that arm by putting him at second base? I think second or third base, there's obviously no shortcoming there. He's going to play very well at both of them. I'm just trying to figure out if that arm can play better and convert more potential chances across the diamond than it can at the Keystone.
Two things. I think first off, we got Mutual's outfield ratings, which are 80, 65, 83, I think. Is that what that says in the chat? And that certainly could play left field in like a very offensive heavy park. As for your points about third base, I think it's very valid. My only problem with putting him at third base then is I'm not running Larkin or Hornsby, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Larkin and Hornsby definitely have the better bats than this card. Larkin maybe is not a better bat depending on how your ballpark is and your team and certain factors like that where you want him to hit in the lineup. So I think he could compete with Larkin for third. I think he's excellent at second base. And certainly would be interesting to see whether people want to play somebody more aggressive like Hornsby or somebody more defensive like Cal or Larkin, right, going forward.
So Chris surprised us tonight. I personally didn't see this coming. Probably no one saw it coming except for Free Dave Brown. But we got 3 surprises tonight of cards that fell on the editing room floor of the Face of the Franchise series, and this is one of them. Evan Longoria for the Tampa Bay Rays. Your third base card here, clearly better against left-handed pitching. I think that with the number of cards that have been released recently, the quality of the toppers that came out today, I think that Evan is going to struggle to find a place on the field in really high leagues. And again, the qualifier I put out at the beginning of the stream here is that all of this feedback is for high diamonds, competitive diamond leagues like the DLL and Perfect League. And I think that Evan will struggle to really make a mark there, and that Avoid K is really being the bugaboo, in addition to defense that just pales in comparison to what people are running at the hot corner. And if you are going to run defense like that, then you're going to need a bat like what we saw with Hornsby. And I think that rings true when you look at the bat similarity scores here and see the numbers that are being produced by some of these comps, whether you've got a Johnny Bench comp versus righties, and again, Bench appears again versus lefties, and Mike Schmidt. Just not enough bat for the lack of glove that you've got there. But what do you see on your end?
I mean, certainly all your points are very valid here. The problem with this card is the Avoid Ks are on the lower end, right, which really struggle to compete against the upper echelon, the top stuff pitchers. So that said, combined with his defense being kind of borderline for third base, it's going to be rough to try and play this one. Certainly at lower levels, right, Avoid K doesn't matter as much. He's got a lot of power. He'll make you a lot of money early on in the game. But I think outside of that, you're probably going to struggle to find a use for Evan Longoria.
So let's talk about Greg Maddux. This was the biggest surprise of the night for me. I was not expecting a Greg Maddux, and this one drops out of nowhere. And honestly, I'm almost offended that Greg Maddux could be the face of the franchise for the Braves when the Cubs had him first and had him, well, after the Braves. I think the Dodgers or the Padres had him last. But aside from being offended by this card, I love this card. You know, it's an improvement to the Maddux that we have, although I think there might be one metric that's slightly deficient to that Maddux. And as you look at the similarity scores, you know, it's going to be no surprise there that Maddux 100 and Maddux 99, as well as a split neutral lefty like SPAHN and another ground baller like Walsh. Those are the closest comps here. So take the old Maddux card and juice it up a little bit, and you've got the new Maddux card. But what do your regression numbers say?
So my numbers for this Maddux, I mean, they're high, right? Like this, I have this as third, and that's with Pedro 1 and Cy Young 2. I mean, this card is unbelievable. Just coming out of the gate, right? This card overall is just absolute monster, and verse right, just 111 control. What is that number, right? Mm-hmm. So I absolutely love them. If you manage to get this card, I know Buck Cheeks, who's in the chat, just pulled one. So if you're a super whale, go hit up Buck Cheeks. I mean, this card is gonna, in my opinion, I would have this card over Cy Young. This thing's insane. I absolutely love it. I'm a big Maddux fanboy though myself. This all levels of play, one of the best pitchers, probably the most consistent pitcher, just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's undoubtedly one of the top 5 starters. So the difference with this one is that 200 people aren't unlocking it tonight. This is a card that's going to slowly permeate itself into packs, slowly find its way to the auction house, and so it's not nearly going to be as readily available. And honestly, I'm happy that it played out that way. If this was the face of the franchise for the Braves and effectively counterfeiting all of those existing Maddux 100s, I think that would have been bad for the market. So I'm going to be interested to follow how quickly we see these cards floating around, where they come from, as well as what they're going to go on the auction house when they are pulled and sold at the open market.
I mean, I told Buck Cheeks no less than $5 million, but you know, you can So
So next we got Mike Trout. And this Mike Trout card, I don't know quite how it compares to the other ones. As you look at the bat similarity scores, I was actually surprised not to see Mike Trout popping up here. So either I've made a mistake on my end, or there's some differentiation here. And then on the defense side, you know, it's very, very competitive there. You've got 105 range, which is obviously, at least in the old meta, was something that you were looking for to put out in center field. But I'm just curious as to, with the game in the evolved state that it's in now, with the pitching getting a lot better tonight, and with the hitting getting a lot better tonight as well, can a card with this level of avoid Ks and it's crazy to call a 106 contact a deficiency at this point, but when you're flirting with low avoid Ks and you don't have just outlandish contact like a Clemente, how competitive will this card be?
So I have to preface everything I say with this. I'm a Mike Trout fanboy. I love Mike Trout. I love the player, everything about him. But looking at this card, you're right. There's a few hinges. But avoid case certainly is a little bit of an issue, right? It's a little bit more than a little bit. At the highest level, he's going to strike out 200 plus times a year, right? But he does have some really good things going for him. Specifically, his defense. That is probably the best defensive right field setup in the game. I don't have actual numbers to back that up, but just off the top of my head, maybe Griffey's better. But if it's not Griffey, it's Mike Trout, right? For sure. So in a more defensive setup, you could throw him out there and see what he does. I'm not sure exactly. He's going to steal a lot for you. He's got some nice stealing metrics as well, with the lower speed, the higher stealing. And he's going to walk a ton, so he does have the lower end contact and the lower end Ks. So again, it's going to be a struggle on perfect. Maybe in diamond, this card's actually really good because of the defense. I think it's a little bit better than probably most people see it on paper, but also I am very biased for Mike Trout.
So next we've got Rogers Hornsby, and this was a card that was teased and then quickly decoded. But if I recall correctly, this one might have gotten a little bit of juice before actually being brought to the stream today. This card looks extremely, extremely awesome. That reverse left-handed profile, I don't know how you'd beat it. With an incredible eye, an incredible contact, and an avoid K that doesn't really have a deficiency there, all to go with 150 power. And so as you start trying to poke a hole in this card, because the verse righty profile is definitely going to play as well, you look at the defense, and I see a defensive profile there that's perfectly acceptable for third base, with a really high error rating and a strong enough arm and range that's probably not going to kill you. And as you look at the bat similarity scores, you really can't find a comp on here that you don't like what you see, and that table's full of green. So he's going to be better than all of the names that you see in there in most of those categories. So I think this is an extremely awesome card. I think this is a card that if people can build it, if they can buy it, they will, and they'll put it in their lineup. And I'm not sure what's going to bump it from their lineup, but what do you think?
In my opinion, looking at this right now, top 3 hitter in the game. Not only is he by far the best first left hitter, and I mean by far, he's got a whole .01 WOBA over Hank Aaron. That is absolutely absurd when we're talking about these numbers, right? And I have him coming in at number 4 V right. It's not even a weakness, it's another strength. And like you said, he plays third base, right? He can even play first base if you're more defensive. He's 5'11", so he'll play. He did get some massive buffs compared to the card that was leaked. We're looking at +5 contact V right, a whopping +14 avoid Ks V right. The most important hitting stat bumped up 14 points. Just absurd. This card is all sorts of nuts. If you spec'd only 1 or 2 divisions and you picked the NL Central, you are a very happy man tonight.
That's a great point you bring up there. And the NL Central, I think, was one of the heavier spec'd ones. Because if you recall, the NL Central was not in the first release of Face of the Franchise. And that's when people understood what the collection series was and how to get them. And so given that it was not part of that release and it wasn't like the Padres or the Mets and already becoming a bottleneck, I think a lot of people did go hard on the NL Central saying, well, if there's only one division that I can get because I'm frozen out of those other ones, it's the Central because I can go ahead and beat the rush and I'm not already behind on those collections. So it'll be curious, or I'd be curious to see the build rates, and maybe that's something that Chris can make a little bit more public. That would be really interesting to see just those topper conversion rates as we see this first week and then maybe the first month and then on from there. Next, we've got Trevor Hoffman. And I think my biggest concern with Hoffman was that he was going to be low stuff. Hoffman's obviously an incredible reliever. He's going to have incredible control. But I was just curious. I was concerned that this card was going to come in a little light on the stuff. And with relievers and just my bullpen composition in general, I typically lean heavy stuff. So I was very happy to see stuff profile 140 plus, and then as you look at his dominant split side versus right, 154 stuff, 106 control, which is just nuts. And then the movement doesn't make him all that vulnerable to the long ball there with 88, certainly playable there. As you look at the similarity scores, again, you're going to see a ton of green here because he's just simply better than these cards. A ton more stuff than Lee Smith, a ton more control than John Hiller, a ton more movement than Dennis Eckersley. So this card is absolutely a staple for bullpens if you can acquire it. But I'm curious what your relief pitcher numbers say.
So I'm just going to put this out there, all right? John Hiller is my number 2 relief pitcher. He has an FIP of 3.9. Number 1 is Trevor Hoffman, obviously, and he has an FIP of 3.3.
Ooh.
There is no comparing this card to another true relief pitcher. He also has 21 stamina to boot, which is on the high end. The only one close in the upper tiers is Eckersley at 24. Just all around, he's got all the benchmarks, except maybe he's just a little low, doesn't hit the 90 movement. That would make this card probably like unstoppable. But he's so close. I mean, just looking at 150 stuff, 105 control. I'm a control freak. I love it. This card is amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's going to be a bullpen staple, potentially and even likely to the end of the game cycle here. Next, we've got Walter Johnson. So this is far from our first Walter Johnson card in the game, but this one is by far the best one that we have here. As we look to compare this to other cards within the game, the Cy Young, which was just sold for an absurd amount on the auction house, this is very similar to that Cy Young, just a little bit lighter on the stuff. And so this card is definitely going to play. I think optimally you're having this card face right-handed batters more often than not, so that could push it to the bullpen. And then what I'm curious to see is the stuff boost, because he does have a weak pitch. He's really a 2-pitch pitcher with the fastball and the curveball, and that changeups is just a 51. So how much is the stuff boost that he's going to get? How much is that going to aid him and really push him to that next level? But this could be a very, very competitive stopper for you in the pen. But I'm curious what you see.
So you have 2 options really with this card. He's either going to be your starter, or he's going to come back in if you're playing some sort of lefty cheese. Because the reason why this thing is so good is you just look at his spread overall, and he just absolutely decimates right-handed batters. It's disgusting what he does to right-handed batters. And the problem is, we just got so many good starting pitchers overall. I don't know what to do with them all right now. We got MADDUX, we got PEDRO, we just got the Cy Young. I know there's only 3 of them, but he's still out there. We got SPAHN. So, do you play Walter as that 4th, 5th pitcher? Or do you put him in the pen, which is going to hide his splits a little bit better? Maybe he comes out after you have a quick opener, and you put him in, and he just really punishes those right-handed batters that were facing your lefty opener. It's probably how I would see him being best utilized. And if you're playing tournaments, it also looks like he can hit pretty well, so that's pretty amazing. Just really great overall card. One of the best non-overall toppers. Righties are crying looking at this card.
Yeah, you see a lot of teams today in their verse left-handed pitching lineup running 8 right-handed batters. If you could get him out there against that lineup say from the second or third inning on, facing 8 of 9 hitters that are right-handed batters, I mean, he's going to cut through that like a hot knife through butter. That would be something that would be a dream scenario. And so I think that the bullpen is likely his home, and how creative owners get with deploying him, whether they do go with the active opener strategy or they just stick him in the back end as a stopper. I think there's no wrong answer there, but there's certainly opportunity to really take advantage of this card.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just overall, I do have him as number 4 starter overall, so it's not like you can't start this card. He's one of the best starters, if not, going to make everybody starting 5. But it's just fantastic.
Yeah, and I think at the very high end, there really isn't such a thing as a starting 5 that you just set and forget. I think more often than not, players at that level are looking at the teams that they're playing, the stadiums that they're playing in, and then how the teams that they're going up against are constructing their lineups. And so I could absolutely see Walter Johnson being someone that you do put out there at the beginning of a game if you run into someone who's maybe playing at a ballpark that nerfs down left-handed batters a bit, or someone running with a lineup that's very right-handed heavy, 5-6 batters in their versus right-handed pitching lineup. He's absolutely a great starter in that scenario. So I think you're absolutely right that he's playable there.
Just one more note on him before we go. Chuck and Max are confirming in the chat. His stuff in the pen goes to 161/178. 170 overall in the pen. So if you really want him as a follower, he's probably now the best one in the game. That's absurd.
Yeah, that is insane stuff. I mean, the K per 9 that should generate should really crush anything else that's in the game right now. I know when Kerry Wood,
Better than good. Yeah, it's better than good.
yeah, like when Kerry Wood was released, he was putting up some big numbers. Then the Gooden came around and he was posting some good numbers. And this should and could put those to shame for right-handed deployments of Walter Johnson. That's great to know. Thanks to the chat. So let's talk Ted Williams. So I know we were due another big Ted card. One of the best hitters in baseball history, and had a card that was playing. The Ted SE was still playing in Perfect League, still playing in high-level Diamond Leagues, but we started to see the decay that you see with the evolving meta, and it just wasn't nearly producing what it once was. And you can see the Perfect League OPS of the 100 SE Teddy is 736, and this basically takes that card and juices it across the board. Additional 12 to contact, additional 25 to gap, additional 3 to the power, 11 to the eye, and 5 to the avoid case. So a card that was already producing acceptably at that 736 number just got a lot better. Now, the challenge is that there's a lot of other cards that are out now too, and Ted's defensive profile, notably his range, probably handcuffs you a bit in terms of what you can do with him. Maybe even so much so that you're looking at a DH-only option here.
Sure, it's a DH only option. He has, 61 range. It's just not going to cut it these days, even in left field. I have him number 1 overall on my sheet, and I'm going to dispute my algorithm right now. I don't agree he's number 1 overall. I would rather have, I think, COBB or Hornsby hitting for me if it was a DH, if I were to choose from those 3. I think he's still really, really strong. I mean, 126 contact V right, 126 IV right is nothing to sneeze at. So he's a very, very strong V right bat, very strong power bat. You're probably going to see lefty cheese teams make a little bit of a comeback between Williams and COBB and Usual, and you'll definitely see him on these teams. But I think he's one of the probably top 5, maybe even top 10 hitter, but I really don't think, I think those 69 avoid Ks versus left are just really going to get punished at Perfect League and maybe high Diamond Leagues as well.
So next we've got Rickey Henderson, and I love novelty cards. I love cards that you can deploy in a way that really stands out, and Cool Papa Bell has been that ever since the Negro League card series came out. And you see some just ridiculous stolen base numbers as you look across, especially the lower levels, but even in the high levels, I've seen some seasons of Cool Papa Bell that really just pop off the page. And what you have here is, and I believe this is a perfect team high, 122 speed. So there's no reason you couldn't give Rickey the Cool Papa Bell treatment, but do so in a way where he can actually hit a bit. That verse left-handed profile is certainly competitive with your contact well above 100 and an eye well above 100 as well. So that eye is certainly going to help you in ballparks that you see people really lowering the BABIP within their ballparks, and that eye is going to help you there. Avoid Ks is nothing to call home about, and that's probably the biggest concern with the bat profile. But flip it over to defense, he's certainly going to play just fine in the outfield with that 98 range, which is going to be better than a lot of options that people already have out in their corners. So this is a very interesting card to me, maybe mostly because of the novelty of it and just wanting to see how many stolen bases I could rack up or how often I could get him onto the field late in a game, needing to steal a base, and then serving as a backup outside of that. But it's certainly a fun card and one that I was really happy to see tonight.
I love Rickey Henderson, man, because I love fast players. I love really, really fast players. I like good defense. I like on-base type guys. I think he falls just a little short, personally. He's so close. He's so close to being, like, one of the best cards in the very game, like, the entire game. I want to be able to start him. Probably right now you're looking at left field with that arm in that range. He'd be a really good left fielder. He can hit free left. He's just on the border of that avoid K threshold you want to have. I think he's good enough for it. The problem is versus left, his power is a little bit high with that low avoid Ks, and he's going to be very volatile that way. And V right, he's definitely going to struggle. So he's definitely a one side of the plate kind of guy, but then you look at the speed, and you just want to play him wherever. He's going to be a little bit too aggressive because that speed is higher than that stealing number. But, man, this card is, like, it's so close to being good that I wouldn't be surprised if it is just a really good card. Hitting, I have him, like, 10 V left and 50 V right. So definitely weaker on the right side, but high enough V left, I think he's going to be playable at the highest level.
Yeah, the challenge that I see is with all the great cards that are out now and all of the great bats you have, as you're building your lineup and you're building your corner outfield specifically, like who are you going to send to the bench to put Rickey in? I haven't done that exercise on paper yet, but my worry is that when I get to do it, there's always going to be someone that I'd rather have in there than Rickey. And so I think his fate on my team, at least, might be that of a backup or a late game D sub if his 98 range is better than whoever I have, or maybe even more likely, keep him on the reserves, and then come playoff time, you put that, you don't need to carry as many pitchers, and so you send one pitcher to your reserves, and you bring Rickey up as that heat-seeking missile that can really change a game in the playoffs, and really just have him there as a pinch runner, and as someone who can step in and really help contribute to winning a game in the right moment. So next we've got Warren Spahn. Warren Spahn is a card that I've had for a long time, and he and I have had a tumultuous relationship talking about the 100 Spahn card. I thought that I actually got the only broken Spahn in the game, but as of last week, he turned in an incredible performance for me in Perfect League, and this is an even better card than that card. This is a card that is pretty split neutral, which resembles the other Spahn card. You're getting more stuff and you're getting more control. So there's definitely a lot to like about this particular card here. I think that right-handed lineups started feasting on the old Spahn card, and maybe with some of the new hitters that came out today, that will still be true of this Spahn card. So maybe you're best using this guy as maybe an opener or maybe even putting him in the pen. But it's definitely a competitive card, and one that I was happy to see come out and happy to figure out where he might fit into my team's plans.
I think this is one of the best examples of a pure starting pitcher card. And the reason I say this is he has perfect splits and 6 pitches. So you put him in the pen, you're not going to get a whole lot more out of him than you are going to start him. He's got those amazing splits where he's almost just perfect down the middle, 120 stuff, 90 movement, almost 105 control overall. I mean, I like this card better than I do Walter, and I would say he's almost as good as that new MADDUX card that came out. I mean, I just think this is like a fantastic card. I think it's basically going to be your must-run left-handed starting pitcher. I don't actually like left-handed starting pitchers that much, but I will make an exception for Warren Spahn. Man, do I like this card. I wish I had this card right now. I didn't get to do my Mets or my Marlins, but I'd pay a lot of good money for this on my team.
Yeah, as we look at the similarity scores, you see some big names here. So you got the Bartolo Colon, the fabled Bartolo Colon card, and it's better across the board than that card, at least in general. And as you compare to see, we're a little lighter on the stuff, but a significant boost to control, which is definitely going to elevate it above that card. The Schoolboy Row card, which just came out and is certainly the talk of the town, or at least was until tonight. And it's arguably better than that card as well. So I think you're absolutely right. So next card we've got is Ty Cobb. So Ty Cobb is one of your toppers here, and he's got a very interesting profile. So he's a center fielder by trade, but not someone who's going to spend a single inning in center field in a league like a perfect league or a DLL due to his range. Absolute weapon on the base paths, and due to the point you brought up a couple slides ago, you got stealing rating higher than speed. So you've got the right mix there, and a base running profile that can absolutely log a decent BSR in a given year to goose up his overall WAR contributions. And the verse right profile, obviously a lot stronger than the verse left. And as we try to find a comparable player to this, it's kind of hard to do it. There's no one that really fits this profile of gigantic contact, good power, good eye, and then that avoid Ks, which is certainly acceptable there. And then jumping down to our glove similarity score there. Again, this is a corner at best, and most likely a DH consideration.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't actually know how speed and stealing works, I'm just going to put this out there because it's a little backwards. Speed is how often you steal the base. Stealing is how successful you are at stealing the base. So if your speed is higher than your stealing, what happens is you'll try to run more than you're actually good at running, and you'll get caught a lot. So this card is going to be amazing at stealing bases because of his ratio, and he's also going to be amazing because his power is lower than his contact. So even though his avoid Ks are on the lower side, I want to shout out Maxfire for really hitting this home with me when I was talking about this card with him earlier, is that with the power lower than the contact, power is actually built into the contact rating with avoid Ks a little bit to produce an overall rating, and he's going to have a really high chance to be a very consistent hitter and a very high contact hitter. And he also has a great bunt for hit. This is a consistent 300 hitter, maybe even more consistent than Gwynn is as a 300 hitter. I think it's the best overall hitter in the game right now. The question is, do you want to platoon him at DH or not? I don't see a lot of DH platoons these days, so probably not. I think you're just good to run this card overall. He's a little short for left field, but if you're an offensive-heavy team, you probably could squeeze him in there. I just think all around, fantastic card. Going to be probably the highest run-producing card in the game. Yeah, he's just great. Wish I had him.
One day, kidneys. One day.
One day.
So next we've got Pedro, and this was the mic drop of all mic drops of the content release. You've got a ridiculous stuff profile, control that's typically reserved for more of your MADDUX type pitcher there, and really a profile that takes the existing Pedro card and blows it out of the water. Existing Pedro, if I'm recalling correctly, is somewhere in the 130 neighborhood, and then mid 80s for both movement and control. And the control getting the boost that it did here is just going to make it dominant. I think it's going to be incredible. I think you could throw it in the pen and get a gigantic stuff boost, but why would you? I think he's going to be a locked in starter and be able to really knife through most lineups. So as you look to try to find a comp here, You can take the Cy Young, and again, we've already talked about the Cy Young once tonight. Give it a ton more stuff and a little bit more control, and you've got Pedro, and then you got Feller there with a lot more control, with even more movement than Feller. So this card is absolutely awesome. This is one that I cannot wait to slot into a lineup and just see how good it can be at the Perfect League.
I mean, move over, Cy Young. You had your time. This is the new best starting pitcher in the game. And I don't think it's relatively close either. I mean, he's just so high above everybody else and stuff. And then he couples it with almost the best control and solid movement. I mean, just absolutely fantastic. I'm looking over this card. I see one weak spot, and that weak spot is his stamina. He's not going to go super long. Maybe you even have to pitch count him now that other cards are coming out. Cy Young is 106. Walter is 100. Spawn is 95. So it's going to be a little iffy. I don't know bullpen. He's got really solid pitches. I mean, he hits 126 on that circle change, right? But he does have 5 of them, so I'm not sure exactly what that number is going to translate to. It's probably 170-ish, but I don't know why you put him in the bullpen. Here's your best starting pitcher in the game, and have at him.
So I got to ask, Kidneys, favorite card in the set?
Oh, favorite card in the set. I mean, I'm a big Red Sox fan, but I don't even think I can go with Ted Williams. There's so many good options. It's got to be MADDUX, but I feel like that's cheating because he's not a real face of the franchise card. So I think I'm going to go with my boy Warren Spawn here. I just love even split starting pitchers with high control. Just a great overall profile.
Yeah, I think the novelty of Rickey was my favorite, and certainly favorite does not equal best by any stretch. But then when Pedro dropped, I completely reversed course. I've been looking for that other right-handed starting pitcher that you can feel really great about every sim that you're going in with that card, and frankly, Seaver has not been that recently, at least for me. And so I think Pedro, and whether you have MADDUX 100 or if you're lucky enough to pull a MADDUX or buy a MADDUX face of the franchise, those two guys are going to be stalwarts for you, and you're going to have them locked into your lineup and feel comfortable even if they're bumping into lineups that have 7 or even 8 left-handed batters. So that's all the content that we had tonight for you guys. That's the 16 cards. Certainly appreciate everyone joining in the chat. I'm sorry for the technical issues that we had at the outset there, and the fact that I haven't been able to get the chat to load and interact with you guys. We'll definitely get those issues ironed out. I'm planning, and Kidneys is going to be joining me for various streams going forward. We're looking to make this a weekly occurrence where whenever content drops, we'll be there to take a look at it and try to contextualize it for you guys. So be sure to hit the follow button, hit the subscribe, and there'll likely even be more streams for you to tune into as well. Last Sunday I did a stream of the Perfect League playoffs, at least until I got unceremoniously dumped 4-0 in the second round. That certainly could be something that we look at doing again. And then there could just be other data explorations. So I think what I'm probably best known for are the Excel spreadsheets that underpin the analysis that I put into this game, that go into my own team building. And there could be an opportunity for us to stream some of that and take some deep dives there. So again, thanks so much for joining us this week. And be sure you join us next week when we take a deep dive analysis into Jeter's steal rating and the warrants there. Kidneys, any final words?
Absolutely, man. Guys, throw DRC a follow. He's amazing, incredible guy. He puts a lot of my spreadsheet work to shame. His stuff is incredible, what he puts out, and he's got some big plans for this channel. So we're really excited about the content we're going to be producing for you guys. And we're just looking forward to moving forward with this. Hopefully we'll get some of those kinks ironed out. And I'm so excited, man. I love doing this. I had a blast.
All right. With that, we'll go ahead and sound off and now go build those teams and win your leagues this week. Thanks, guys.